and I'm the Assistant Director of the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Institute, which is the research arm of Michigan Virtual University. Next slide. Michigan Virtual University is not a university actually. We are a nonprofit 501c3 with 4 divisions focusing on K-12 online and blended learning. You can learn more about the other divisions if you'd like to by visiting mivu.org. And a little more information about MVLRI specifically. In 2012, the governor and Michigan legislature passed legislation requiring the Michigan Virtual University, or MVU, to establish a Center for Online Learning Research and Innovation. And through this center, directed MVU to work on a variety of projects. So each year we receive about 13 to 15 legislative directives on which we have to research and report back out to the state of Michigan and beyond. So as we all know, next slide please, information literacy comes in many shapes, sizes, and contexts when it comes to online learning especially. And where this report's findings start us off, I'll be talking about the annual effectiveness report that's published by my colleague Joe Friedoff every year at the Institute. And it starts us off at the importance of students learning to learn how to learn online before they are placed in online courses, which often is the case. So what I'd like to show you are the data from across the state, looking at all of Michigan's K-12 online learning programs and the students' performance within those programs as a means of emphasizing the importance of supporting students so that they can be successful in online learning programs. Next slide, please. Over 76,000 Michigan K-12 students took 1 or more virtual courses during the 2013-2014 school year, and this number is up almost 21,000 over the number reported last year, which is an increase of about 38%. However, they still account for relatively few students overall, and the majority of the students continue to be at the middle school and high school level, though we did see a lot of 100% increases in the K-6 area grade levels since last year. Next slide, please. Michigan K-12 students accounted for an estimated 319,630 virtual course enrollments in 2013-2014, which surpassed the 2012-2013 figure by almost 135,000 enrollments, which is an increase of about 73% since last year. Next slide. While enrollment counts provide an important glimpse into virtual learning in the state of Michigan, of even greater interest to many is information on the performance of virtual learners. And one measure of how students perform in their virtual courses is their completion status for an enrollment. When schools report enrollment information to the state, one of the data components submitted is for a completion status field. And a few examples of completion statuses schools can report for on enrollment include audited, completed passed, completed failed, and withdrawn exited. Next slide. And we'll be looking specifically at those who fell into the completed passed area, which is considered technically the pass rate. Next slide, please. Starting with non-virtual learners, so learners who did not take a single course virtually in 2013-2014. Their average completed pass rate was 89%. This provides a benchmark for comparing how virtual learners did in their non-virtual courses. Presumably, if virtual learners were the same as non-virtual learners in terms of course performance, their completed or pass rate for non-virtual courses should also be 89%, right? Next slide, please. Only it wasn't. It was, unfortunately, 71%. This sizable drop-off suggests that the virtual learners on average do not perform as well in their traditional brick-and-mortar schools as do non-virtual learners. Next slide, please. If we use the 71% as benchmark for how well virtual learners do in their non-virtual courses, the 57% completed pass rate for these students in their virtual courses suggests that their performance is lower in their virtual courses on average than it is in their non-virtual courses. Next slide. A troubling finding from the report is the relatively large number of students who are taking heavier numbers of virtual courses and failing all of them. Of the students who took only 1 virtual course in 2013-2014, 16,068 students passed the 1 course. Next slide. whereas 8,391 students failed the one course. Next slide. Of the students who took 6 virtual courses in 2013-2014, 938 students passed all 6 courses. Next slide. And in contrast, unfortunately, 2,562 failed all 6 courses. Next slide. Despite overall completion rates below desirable levels, there are examples of successful virtual programs. 51% of schools with virtual enrollments in 2013-2014 had school-wide completed pass rates of 70% or better. Clearly, some schools are implementing models that work better than others do. It is not clear specifically what differs between successful and unsuccessful schools, although our team at MVLRI is looking into this phenomena. But likely factors we've found include the quality of course content, the skill of the online instructor, if there even is one, because some programs do not provide an online instructor within the courses, the readiness of students selected for virtual learning. Are they given some kind of an orientation or not to online learning, especially if they're new to it? And the wraparound support schools use to nurture their virtual learners. And in the state of Michigan, it's required that all traditional brick and mortar schools offer a mentor to online learners. So that is a state requirement, but as we've seen in some of our studies, from program to program, these types of supports vary very much so. Next slide, please. So at MVLRI, we have free resources that we have developed based on our research and the research results produced by our fellows, who are scholars throughout the field. These reports are for various stakeholders, including parents, and you'll see on the slide a parent guide to online learning, helping to educate parents and guardians about what online learning is and how to best support their child when they learn online. Next slide. We also have the Online Learning Orientation Tool, or OLOT, which is a self-paced learning tool designed to help students understand what online learning entails and introduce the skills and knowledge that are key to success. A lot of our mentors use this, and a lot of our mentors are school media and technology specialists. So this has come into handy, be very handy when they are sitting down to mentor students in their online courses. Next slide, please. And finally, we have Mentor Fundamentals, a guide for mentoring online learners, which is a guide for school personnel who are serving as on-site mentors who need training, knowledge of best practices to help support the online students that they oversee. And we've also captured the essence of Mentor Fundamentals into an hour-long online learning training module that mentor teams can use to train new mentors. And this is all freely accessible, and I believe we can rebrand, people can take it and remix it for their own context. So if you have questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me at kkennedy@mivu.org. And that's it for me. I'm going to pass it off to Ian O'Byrne.
All right, so I will stop.
Okay. How did that sound okay?
What's up? No, it was perfect. I liked it. I liked it. I didn't realize that OLOT was remixable. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Okay, cool.
I liked it.
Dennis. Was that Ian or was it Dennis? Okay.
Very good.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I hope there was enough context around the SMT stuff. Okay, Ian, let me jump into screen sharing, and I will get into here. Screen share.
So for mine, what I did is I screen shared, but I got 2 monitors. So I have you guys on one monitor, and I had the PowerPoint on the other. I did full screen on the other one, and then it showed up. So I'll show.
Here, let me see if you can see full screen here in a second. File. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Oh, crud. Hold on. Cancel. What did I just do? Oh my god, I'm so horrible. Slide.
Well, no, because the hard part is that it's doing...
Okay, here we go. Can you see full screen?
Yeah, so click that notes part down, drag that down a little bit so we don't see the notes bar. And then I always wonder, how do you get rid of that?
This sidebar.
I don't think you can drag that over. I wonder if you can. Is there a different view angle? Is there like there's view, not master.
View present. Did that work?
It's I can keep it like that. The slides are on the side, but that's fine. It'll let me know what's happening next.
Well, I wonder if it will let me view, if here, let me try to
Well, do you only have one screen?
Yeah, I do, but let me see if I can do something different. Hold on.
You might be able to do when it asks you which screen you want to share, have it share your full screen, and then,
Okay.
yeah, because it's only doing the browser window. So if you do the full screen, it might be able to pull over everything, and then when you hit present, we'll see what it does.
Okay. So if I do desktop, how about that?
Yeah, do desktop.
Okay. Wow, what just happened?
It's Inception.
No kidding. Okay, can you see that now?
Yep.
Okay, so that should be okay, and then I can just...
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so just tell me when to click next.
Okay. So hold on one sec. I wanted to. So once again, I wanted to thank everyone for this opportunity to come in and speak about, information or web literacy and how this might apply to teaching and learning online, but also our virtual learners. This is material that I've been working on and researching on my own over the last couple of years. While I was at University of New Haven, I built a program to teach teachers how to be experts in teaching and online and virtual students in hybrid spaces. I've been working and researching and writing about this content with my colleague Christy Pytash, who's at Kent State University. My name is Ian O'Byrne. I'm at the College of Charleston in the Teacher Ed department. And pretty much today we're going to take a look at information, or what I've been researching lately, which is web literacy and what this means as we teach and learn online. Next slide, please. So I usually begin a lot of my talks with a tweetable summary just to keep myself focused, especially given time constraints. I look at this as a case of literacy and technology and the opportunities that we have to change teaching and learning for students. We have tremendous opportunities, but it's up to educators, it's up to us to figure out how can we modify these opportunities to make students successful. And a lot of that stuff Kathryn already spoke about. We have to figure out what those variables are that are impacting students in virtual, hybrid, or totally online learning spaces. Next slide, please. So a lot of what we're seeing is that there is a gradual movement, and I don't have to tell this to anyone that's in the audience, there's a gradual movement in literacy practices from print to pixel. And as we make this move from print to pixel, we have tremendous opportunities to empower students, to empower learners, but the challenge is that as a field, we're trying to figure out what to do with this, but also on an individual basis, educators are trying to figure out what these changes mean. Next slide, please. So the end result is that we really have unprecedented opportunities to empower learners, but the challenge is that we don't fully know what to do with these powers, or how to take that next step to make sure that learners can use these spaces and learners can be scaffolded by educators. Next slide, please. Some of these challenges arise from the fact that our world is becoming increasingly digital. When I look at literacy and technology research or technology instruction, I view it as a literacy subject. The reason why I view it as a literacy piece is because we know that literacy is increasingly taking over. I mean, technology is increasingly taking over what happens in our daily lives, and as a result, we need to understand what these technologies mean. So even when we go down to the coffee shop, we're using technology, we're being tracked by technology, by business and governments. Next slide. Along with our use of technology and viewing technology as a literacy are concerns that we have about privacy and security. We know in the post-Snowden era that as I said earlier, businesses and governments are tracking our movements online. We are slowly building up a digital identity. It's important for students and educators to consider privacy and security concerns as we have students read and write online in hybrid and virtual spaces. Next slide, please. I think also the challenge with this, when we looked at the first slide, we looked at the individual looking across to the other peak and not knowing what the next step would be. Well, the challenge is that yes, we are increasingly digital, and yes, we have security concerns or privacy concerns, but the truth of the matter is that we don't really know what the future will look like. We have no idea what infrastructure or what learning platforms or what the tiny tykes that are in our classrooms, what their future will look like. So we see wearable technologies starting to take place and take root in society. We know tablets and mobile devices are hugely important. We don't really know what technology will look like in the future, and so as a result, we have to be flexible, and we have to be nimble, and we have to make constant decisions and reevaluate those decisions as we think about the ways that literacy and technology impact what should be happening or could happen in our classrooms. Next slide, please. So as I said earlier, I view this as a literacy issue. I don't view it as a technology issue. I think that to me, literacy is reading, writing, socializing, communicating, and I think the use of technology is one of these fundamental literacies that individuals need to be able to acquire. So whether it's a face-to-face classroom or or a hybrid classroom or a virtual online university, we need to empower our students with these skills. We live in a world now, many of us, that you can't even apply for a job, a basic entry-level job, without being able to get on a computer and negotiate that computer and negotiate these technologies to be able to get that job. So this, to me, is a literacy issue, the use of technology and the use of these virtual and hybrid learning environments. Next slide, please. The reason why that I say that it's a literacy issue is because there are, first of all, fundamental changes that are occurring to the reader. A couple slides ago, I referenced the fact that on an individual basis, the field is trying to make sense of what to do with these technologies, but on an individual basis, we are all trying to figure out what these technologies mean. So as educators, we were raised to use textbooks, and we use teaching manuals, and we still read magazines, and many of us are starting to use cell phones and tablets, and some of us do a lot of our reading and communicating on our mobile device or on a tablet, and we're making this transition. But on an individual level, we're trying to transition over and figure out how do we use these different texts and tools, while at the same time we have to figure out what do they mean for teaching and learning in the classroom. Next slide, please. Another challenge that also occurs, that is occurring, is that there are fundamental changes that are occurring to the text. So on the last slide we talked about many of us learned through a textbook, and many of us started teaching others through the use of a textbook, but the fundamental nature of text is changing as educators are trying to use the text to teach. So if we think about back in the day, when we went to school, we would carry around cuneiform tablets in our backpacks, and we would lug them in and out of school all the time. Eventually we invented the printing press, and we were able to mass print text. We fast forward a little bit and have libraries develop. I know that when I was growing up, it was amazing to me to be able to go to the library, and I could read and learn about anything that I wanted to. And now the truth of the matter is that image all the way in the bottom right, for the most part, that's the way that we learn, we read, write, we communicate, we socialize. We're on mobile devices, we're on tablets, we can read, write, with an enormous library that pretty much will teach us anything that we want to. It depends on where we dip in and what we identify and what we connect with. So there's fundamental changes that occur to what we consider to be text while we're trying to figure out how to teach and use it as a text. Next slide, please. Finally, there's changes that are occurring to the activity of reading. And so, I mean, if we send students out online and they have to go online and research a given subject, they can hop, skip, and jump all around the internet as they search and sift and try to identify an answer or identify truth online. So the challenge is, as an educator, we used to be able to say, go to page 39, go to the second paragraph, put your finger on the first word of that paragraph, and you knew where every single student was in the classroom, either face-to-face or virtual, and you could connect around that word. Now that really isn't true anymore. Given the keywords that we use, the search terms, the different search tools, given the ways that we can communicate and write or blog or share out that information in whatever mode that we choose, pretty much any student could go on and they could learn different things at different times. And they would all be completely true. And this fundamentally, once again, is changing teaching and learning and what happens or could happen in our classroom. Next slide, please. One way that we've been addressing this, there are numerous lenses that we can look at to try and make sense of what's happening. I was a researcher with the New Literacies Lab. We've heard terms digital literacies. We've heard about information literacies, techno literacies. So one of the pieces that I've been working on over the last couple of years is the web literacy map with Mozilla. The idea is that we want to build one map to provide a topographical view of all of these changes that are occurring to literacy as a result of technology. In many ways, I believe that some of the other fields are a bit limited in the scope. So one of the things that I like about the web literacy map is it empowers students and educators, but it empowers us to be readers, writers, and participators or connectors online. Next slide, please. One of the first areas that is involved there is exploring, or what we call reading online. And this includes a lot of the basic work that I helped complete while I was at the University of Connecticut, and others have researched, which is typical online reading comprehension and making sense as we search and sift through online texts. Next slide, please. The second area, the second major thread, is building or writing the web. I think that when we move to online spaces, we have incredible opportunities, and our students should have incredible opportunities to not only read and use the web as an informational text, but write and create something with the web. And that can have powerful consequences as we think about opportunities for students to build content online, students to code and create and build games and program and recreate truth online. Next slide, please. One of the most powerful pieces about being online is the opportunity to connect and participate in a global learning space. So whether this space is totally online, or we have hybrid learning moments, or if we move to a totally virtual online school, we have opportunities, and we should provide opportunities for our students to connect outside of the classroom and participate on the open web. So we see elements of sharing and collaborating. We also see the elements of privacy and open learning or open ed resources built into that piece about connecting. Next slide, please. So one of the challenges, how do we make this all happen? When we want to teach online, we want to teach in virtual learning spaces, you know, how do we make these different aspects work to our best ability? In Kathryn's piece earlier, she talked about one of the variables might be the different expertise in the role on the part of the educator, or the lack thereof. You know, the educator not being there. So I think that the educator really has a powerful role. Yes, we want students teaching each other, but there's also an opportunity for educators to lead. Next slide, please. But in this, there's a couple different variables, once again, that affect what we do. One of these is the aspect of chronotopes. Chronotopes is a literacy, it's a literary concept, and it basically means that there's changing configurations of time and space. So one of the beauties, I think, in teaching online or hybrid or virtual spaces is that time and space don't really matter. You can put a post or a prompt or an assignment out there, and there will be different time periods, and students can come in from different locations globally. And as the educator, you have to figure out pedagogically what are the decisions that you will make to modify those chronotopes. How will you modify the assignments so that students can have that extra time space, that extra element of time to think about the assignment. And chronotopes is increasingly powerful because some of our students need the extra time to think about the content before they complete the assignment. So some students like the opportunity to almost push pause on learning or push pause on their thinking so that they can think through it before they respond and complete the assignment. So it's important to think about time and space and how that is a variable in our classroom. Next slide, please. It's also important to think about not only face-to-face, but online and all the different shades of gray in between as we think about teaching and learning and our use of technology. We have more on this in the links that we shared on the HackPad. I have a column, and we have a webinar. Christy and I had a webinar that we have online through MVLRI. Yes, I said it correctly. Wow, I said it the first time through correctly, too. So we have a webinar where we talk about our thinking and our research on what we mean by hybrid and blended learning and how it might scale us up to virtual. We also have a column that we wrote for the Journal of Adolescent and Adult Literacy. We interview a bunch of different experts in the field. Kathryn's one of them. And it's interesting to hear the experts talk about totally online, totally face-to-face, and all these shades of gray in between as we're all trying to figure out what this means and pedagogically what it could mean for our students. Next slide, please. One way that we've tried to make sense of this is we've developed a curriculum that ties into the web literacy map to figure out ways to empower our learners. Next slide. So we've built and tested over the last couple of years a map that ties right into that web literacy map that I shared, and I have more resources that I've shared in the HackPad. I've built an entire MOOC that focuses on these three cornerstones, and these three cornerstones tie right back to that web literacy map that we talked about earlier, and having students explore or read, and having students build or write, and then ultimately having students connect or participate on the open web. So the first of these, next slide, is online collaborative inquiry. And what we have students doing here, and it's at the top of the pyramid, is having students connect and collaborate online. So as you build up these online spaces, as you build up learning opportunities in face-to-face or totally virtual online learning spaces, do you provide students to collaborate and co-construct information? So if you have students research and build a wiki together in class, you're pretty much doing this. It's having students collaborate, co-construct, arrive at a common pathway using multiple pathways, a common outcome using multiple pathways of knowledge. So if they're collaborating and reading and writing and connecting online, and then they're creating something together, that's showing them how to collaborate and participate and communicate with others. Next slide, please. The second strand, the second cornerstone, is online reading comprehension. This is a lot of the work that we referenced earlier. When I was a researcher at University of Connecticut, we viewed online reading comprehension as questioning, locating, evaluating, synthesizing, and communicating online information. Put simply, when we use the internet as an informational text, what are the skills and strategies students use to search and sift online? And how do they synthesize that information once they get it? So yes, you might still have a textbook or research PDFs, but do you also allow your students to search online and negotiate multiple online texts, wiki pages, different websites, blogs, and have them fold that information into what their ultimate response might be? Those would be elements where we have students read and explore online. Last slide, please. The last piece for me is really the most important piece. That's online content construction. There are numerous aspects of online information that might be a little bit questionable. I also think as I said at the beginning of this, that technology is a literacy, and we should empower our students to be web literate. And part of this is that they need to not only be consumers or readers of the internet, but they also need to be able to write the web. They need to be able to blog. They need to be able to put videos out there. They need to think. They need to believe in themselves and their ability to create and construct information online. So that might take the shape of blogging. It might be putting videos out there. It might be something a little bit more advanced, like remixing video or creating video mashups. And it might be something along the lines of coding and programming, but thinking about different ways to write or build online spaces. I think that's it. Inception.
All right, how did I do this? There we go. Nope, just kidding. There we go. Did that do it? No, it didn't.
Yeah, that looks good. So hit that screen share button again.
Nope.
Why does this eye look more tired? No, it's this eye.
There we go. All right.
So that's now it's done. What I'll do is I'll hit stop broadcast.